The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Bragg's shooting range as Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her Kevlar vest one final time. Today was qualification day, and every soldier on base knew what that meant. The annual marksmanship competition would determine who earned the coveted expert rating, and more importantly, who would represent the battalion in the upcoming inter-base championship. Maria had been preparing for this moment for months. At 24, she was already recognized as one of the finest markswomen in her unit. But today felt different. There was electricity in the air, the kind that comes when someone is about to prove themselves in a way that changes everything. "Santos, you're up in lane 7, called out Master Sergeant Williams, clipboard in hand. His weathered face showed no emotion. But Maria caught the slight nod of approval he gave her. Williams had been her mentor since she arrived at Bragg 2 years ago, and his faith in her abilities had never wavered. She walked to her assigned lane with confident steps, her boots crunching on the gravel. The other soldiers were already settling into their positions. Checking their equipment one last time, Maria could feel their eyes on her. Word had spread about her practice scores, and expectations were running high. The armory sergeant approached with her rifle, an M4A, one that looked standard in every way. "Here you go, Santos. This one's been assigned to you for today's qualification." He handed her the weapon with a routine gesture. But something felt off immediately. The rifle seemed heavier than usual, and when Maria performed her standard safety check, she noticed the bolt didn't slide as smoothly as it should. "Sergeant, this rifle feels different," she said, raising her hand to get the armory sergeant's attention. But he was already moving down the line, distributing weapons to other soldiers. The range was bustling with activity, and her concern was lost in the noise of preparation. Maria examined the weapon more carefully. The serial number was different from any rifle she'd used before, and there were subtle scratches around the bolt carrier group that suggested recent maintenance work. She pulled the charging handle several times, noticing a slight grinding sensation that made her stomach tighten with worry. "Is there a problem, Santos?" Master Sergeant Williams had appeared beside her, his keen eyes taking in every detail of her examination. "Sir, this rifle doesn't feel right. The action isn't smooth. And I think there might be an issue with the bolt carrier group," Maria explained, her voice steady despite her growing concern. Williams took the rifle and performed his own quick inspection. His experienced hands worked the action several times before handing it back to her. "I see what you mean. But we're pressed for time today. The replacement rifles are all signed out for the training exercise in Sector 4. Can you work with this one?" Maria felt a knot form in her stomach. This was her chance to prove herself, potentially to set a new base record that had stood for 7 years, but with a questionable rifle, her chances of success seemed to be slipping away before she even began. "I can try, sir," she replied, though doubt crept into her voice for the first time that morning. "That's the spirit. Remember, Santos, great marksmen adapt to their equipment, not the other way around," Williams said with a firm pat on her shoulder before moving on to check other soldiers. Maria spent the next 10 minutes familiarizing herself with the rifle's quirks. The trigger pull felt inconsistent, sometimes crisp and clean, other times with a noticeable drag that could throw off her timing. The sight picture seemed slightly off as well, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong. Years of training had taught her to trust her instincts, and every instinct was telling her this weapon would betray her when she needed it most. The other soldiers were finishing their equipment checks, and she could hear the range safety officers beginning their final briefings. Lieutenant Rodriguez, who had been her closest competition in practice sessions, caught her eye from 3 lanes over and gave her a confident smile. He was using his personal rifle today, one he'd spent months customizing and perfecting for competition shooting. "Attention on the firing line," boomed the range control tower voice over the loudspeakers. "Shooters, you have 5 minutes to zero your weapons before we begin the timed qualification course. Remember, today's scores count toward your annual rating and base record consideration." Maria's hands moved automatically through the zeroing process, but her mind was racing. She knew that the base record of 396 out of 400 possible points had been set by Staff Sergeant Thomas Chen in 2016. Chen was a legend at Fort Bragg, known for his mechanical precision and unshakable focus under pressure. His record had withstood challenges from dozens of excellent marksmen over the years. The zeroing shots confirmed her fears. Her first round hit 2 inches low and slightly left of center. Normally, this would be a simple adjustment. But when she corrected the sights and fired again, the second shot landed in almost the exact same spot. The rifle wasn't responding to her adjustments properly. "Having trouble, Santos?" Lieutenant Rodriguez called out from his lane, his voice carrying just enough concern to sound genuine, while his eyes showed clear satisfaction at seeing his main competition struggle. "Just getting familiar with the equipment," Maria replied evenly, refusing to let her frustration show. She made another sight adjustment, this time more dramatic, and fired her third zeroing shot. This one hit closer to center, but still not where it should have been given her adjustment. Time was running out for the zeroing period, and Maria had to make a critical decision. She could continue trying to perfect the zero and risk running out of preparation time, or she could accept that the rifle was flawed and try to compensate with her own skill and experience. She chose the latter, making one final minor adjustment and then focusing on her shooting position. If the rifle was going to fight her, she would have to be perfect in every other aspect of her technique. Her breathing, her grip, her trigger control, and her follow-through would all need to be flawless to overcome the weapon's deficiencies. Zeroing time complete. "Shooters, clear your weapons and prepare for the qualification course," announced the tower. The course consists of 4 stages: prone supported, prone unsupported, kneeling, and standing. Each stage will test different aspects of marksmanship under varying conditions. Maria cleared her rifle and checked her ammunition one final time. She had been issued standard military rounds, nothing special, but at least they appeared to be from the same lot number. Consistency in ammunition was crucial for accuracy, and mixing different lots could introduce variables that even the best shooters couldn't overcome. As she waited for her turn to begin, Maria closed her eyes and visualized each stage of the course. She had run through this exact sequence hundreds of times in practice, and her muscle memory was rock solid. The key would be trusting her training while adapting to the rifle's peculiarities in real time. "Lane 7. You are cleared to begin stage 1, came the command from the tower. Maria moved into the prone supported position, resting the rifle on sandbags that would provide maximum stability. This was traditionally the easiest stage, where most shooters achieved perfect or near-perfect scores. She settled in behind the rifle, adjusting her position until everything felt natural despite the weapon's unfamiliar characteristics. The targets were set at 300 yards, challenging but well within her capabilities. She controlled her breathing, letting her natural respiratory pause guide her timing. The crosshairs settled on the center of the target, and she began her trigger squeeze. The shot broke clean, and she immediately knew it was good despite the rifle's resistance. Through her scope, she could see a clean hole in the 9 ring, slightly right of center. Not perfect, but solid given the circumstances. Shot after shot, Maria fought against the rifle's inconsistencies while maintaining her focus and technique. Some rounds hit exactly where she aimed, while others seemed to have minds of their own. By the end of the first stage, she had scored 97 out of 100 possible points, a respectable showing but 3 points behind where she needed to be for a record-setting pace. The second stage brought new challenges as she moved to the prone, unsupported position. Without the sandbags to steady her rifle, every small inconsistency in the weapon's behavior would be magnified. The wind had also picked up slightly, adding another variable to an already complex equation. Maria's years of training served her well as she adapted her shooting technique to compensate for the rifle's quirks. She learned to anticipate the slightly delayed trigger break and adjusted her follow-through to account for the weapon's tendency to pull shots to the left. It was like learning to drive a car with a bent steering wheel, requiring constant compensation to go straight. As the second stage progressed, something remarkable began to happen. The more Maria shot the problematic rifle, the better she understood its specific characteristics. She started to predict its behavior, making micro-adjustments to her aim and technique that gradually brought her shots closer to the center of the target. By the end of the second stage, she had clawed back 2 of the 3 points she had lost in the first stage. Her cumulative score of 195 out of 200 put her back in contention for the record, though she would need near-perfect performance in the 2 remaining stages to achieve her goal. The third stage, shooting from the kneeling position, was where many good shooters saw their scores drop significantly. The position was inherently less stable than prone, and the increased muscle tension required to maintain the stance often led to tremors and inconsistent shots. Maria had always excelled at kneeling position shooting, using a technique she had developed that distributed her weight differently than the standard military method. As she settled into position, she felt the familiar comfort of a stance that had served her well in countless practice sessions. The rifle still fought her, but by now she was anticipating its quirks and compensating almost automatically. Her shots began to cluster tighter around the center of the target, and she could sense the attention of other shooters and range officials beginning to focus on her lane. "Santos is having quite a day," she heard someone whisper from behind the firing line. Word was spreading that something special might be happening in Lane 7, despite the early challenges with her equipment. As she prepared for the final stage, standing position, shooting at the most challenging distance, Maria felt a calm determination settle over her. The rifle that had seemed like an insurmountable obstacle an hour ago had become just another challenge to overcome. She had proven to herself that skill and determination could triumph over imperfect equipment. The standing position was the ultimate test of a marksman's ability. With no support except their own body, shooters had to rely entirely on their natural stability, breathing control, and mental focus. It was here that Chen had earned most of the points that secured his record-setting score 7 years earlier. Maria's final shots would determine not only her own success, but whether she could overcome the disadvantage of faulty equipment to achieve something truly exceptional. The base record that had stood unchallenged for years was within her reach, but only if she could maintain her newfound understanding of the rifle's behavior under the most demanding conditions. As she raised the rifle to her shoulder for the first standing shot, Maria knew that the next few minutes would define her military career in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The weeks following Maria's record-breaking performance brought changes she never could have anticipated. What started as a remarkable shooting achievement had transformed into something much larger, attracting attention from military units across the entire armed forces. Her story had spread through official channels and informal networks alike, creating opportunities that would reshape her entire career trajectory. The first indication that her life was about to change came 3 days after the record was set. Master Sergeant Williams approached her during routine training with an unusual expression on his weathered face. "Santos, you've got visitors," he said simply. "Report to the base commander's office at 1,400 hours. And Santos, wear your dress uniform." When Maria arrived at Colonel Harrison's office, she found 3 individuals she didn't recognize, waiting alongside the base commander. 2 wore standard Army uniforms with unit patches she couldn't immediately identify, while the third was in civilian clothing that somehow still projected unmistakable military bearing. "Sergeant Santos, please have a seat," Colonel Harrison began. "These gentlemen have traveled quite a distance to speak with you about your recent achievement and its implications for your future service." The civilian spoke first, introducing himself simply as Mr. Davis from a Department of Defense training development program. "Sergeant Santos, your performance last week has generated considerable interest in certain circles. What you accomplished wasn't just about setting a record. You demonstrated an ability to adapt and excel under adverse conditions that we find extremely valuable." Major Thompson, one of the uniformed visitors, leaned forward in his chair. "We've been reviewing your complete service record, and the marksmanship achievement fits a pattern of exceptional performance. Your instructors describe you as someone who thrives when faced with challenges that would overwhelm most soldiers." The conversation that followed would alter Maria's understanding of her own potential within the military structure. These weren't simply congratulatory visitors. They represented opportunities for advanced training and specialized assignments that could define the remainder of her career. The record-setting performance had apparently showcased exactly the kind of adaptability and mental toughness that special operations units actively sought in their recruits. Captain Rodriguez, the third visitor, explained that several elite military schools had expressed interest in having Maria as a student. "The Advanced Marksmanship Unit has specifically requested that we extend an invitation for you to attend their instructor development course." Additionally, the Special Operations Command has indicated that your demonstrated abilities align with their selection criteria. Maria felt overwhelmed by the sudden expansion of possibilities. Just days earlier, she had been a good soldier with solid skills and ambitions for advancement through traditional channels. Now she was being presented with opportunities that could fast-track her career in directions she had never seriously considered. "Sir, I'm honored by these opportunities, but I have to ask why my performance has generated this level of attention," Maria said, wanting to understand the full scope of what was happening. Mr. Davis smiled approvingly at her question. "Sergeant Santos, what you did last week wasn't just about overcoming equipment problems. You demonstrated something we call adaptive expertise. The ability to modify your approach in real time while maintaining exceptional performance standards. That's a rare quality that becomes increasingly valuable as soldiers advance to more complex and unpredictable assignments." Over the following hours, Maria learned that her story had reached the highest levels of military training command. The combination of her technical skill and mental adaptability had caught the attention of instructors and commanders who were always searching for soldiers capable of handling the most demanding assignments the military had to offer. The formal offers came a week later. The Advanced Marksmanship Unit wanted her to attend a 6-month instructor development program that would qualify her to train other elite marksmen. Special Operations Command extended an invitation to their selection course, with the understanding that successful completion would open doors to assignments she had only read about in military publications. But perhaps most intriguingly, Mr. Davis returned with an offer to participate in a classified research program studying adaptive performance under stress. This program would combine advanced training with the development of new instructional methods for teaching adaptability to other soldiers. Master Sergeant Williams, who had become something of a mentor to Maria, provided perspective that helped her evaluate these unexpected opportunities. "Santos, I've been in the military for 30 years. And I've seen a lot of good soldiers plateau because they were afraid to take risks. What happened on that range last month showed me something about your character that goes beyond marksmanship ability." Williams paused, choosing his words carefully. "You could stay here, continue developing as a conventional soldier, and have a perfectly respectable career. Or you could accept one of these opportunities and see just how far your abilities can take you. The choice is yours, but I think you'd regret not finding out what you're truly capable of." Maria spent several days considering her options, discussing them with family and fellow soldiers whose opinions she valued. The consensus was clear. Opportunities like these didn't come along often, and her unique combination of skills and temperament made her an ideal candidate for the more challenging paths being offered. Her decision came during a return visit to the shooting range, where everything had started. Standing in Lane 7, holding a standard-issue rifle that functioned perfectly, Maria realized that the malfunctioning weapon had actually been a gift. It had forced her to discover capabilities she didn't know she possessed, revealing depths of adaptability and determination that might have remained hidden under normal circumstances. She accepted the offer to attend the Advanced Marksmanship Unit's Instructor Development Program, with the understanding that it would be followed by additional specialized training based on her performance and interests. The decision represented more than just career advancement. It was a commitment to pushing the boundaries of her own potential. The night before her departure for the new assignment, the entire unit gathered for an informal send-off celebration. Lieutenant Rodriguez, who had become a close friend despite their initial competition, presented her with a custom shooting patch that read, "Adapt and Overcome," words that had become associated with her story throughout the base. "Maria, you've shown all of us that limitations are often just challenges we haven't figured out how to overcome yet," Rodriguez said, as he pinned the patch to her jacket. "I hope you'll remember us when you're training the next generation of elite marksmen." Colonel Harrison attended the gathering personally, an unusual gesture that underscored the significance of Maria's achievement and its impact on the entire base. "Sergeant Santos, your performance last month has become part of Fort Bragg's history, but more importantly, it's inspired other soldiers to believe that exceptional results are possible, even under the most challenging circumstances." As Maria prepared for her new assignment, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed because of a single day on the shooting range. The malfunctioning rifle that had initially seemed like such an obstacle had actually become the catalyst for opportunities she could never have imagined. Her story had evolved from a personal achievement into something that inspired others and contributed to the military's understanding of human adaptability under pressure. The Advanced Marksmanship Unit welcomed her with the respect typically reserved for soldiers with much more experience and higher ranks. Her reputation had preceded her, and instructors were eager to study the techniques she had developed for overcoming equipment limitations. What had been an intuitive adaptation to a specific problem was now being analyzed and systematized for training other soldiers. During her first week at the new assignment, Maria was paired with Staff Sergeant Chen, the former record holder whose achievement she had surpassed. Rather than any resentment, Chen showed genuine enthusiasm for understanding how she had pushed marksmanship performance to a new level. "Santos, when I set that record 7 years ago, I had perfect equipment and ideal conditions," Chen explained during one of their training sessions. Chen explained. What you accomplished was far more impressive because it demonstrated that skill can triumph over imperfect circumstances. That's a lesson every soldier needs to learn. Working with Chen and other elite instructors, Maria began to understand that her achievement represented more than just exceptional marksmanship. She had demonstrated principles of adaptation and mental toughness that were applicable far beyond shooting ranges. These qualities were exactly what the military needed in soldiers who would face increasingly complex and unpredictable challenges. 6 months into her new assignment, Maria received word that her story was being included in official military training materials as an example of adaptive problem-solving under pressure. The malfunctioning rifle that had nearly derailed her record attempt was now being used to teach other soldiers about overcoming adversity through skill and determination. More importantly, Maria had discovered that the adaptability she demonstrated that day on the shooting range was not an isolated ability. It had become a defining characteristic of her approach to every challenge she encountered, enabling her to excel in training programs that had defeated other highly qualified soldiers. As she looked toward future assignments and continued advancement, Maria understood that the most significant outcome of her record-breaking performance wasn't the recognition or career opportunities it had created. The real achievement was the discovery of her own capacity to transform obstacles into advantages through skill, determination, and adaptive thinking. The rifle that had malfunctioned in her hands had taught her the most valuable lesson of her military career: that limitations exist primarily in the mind, and that exceptional performance is possible for those willing to adapt, overcome, and push beyond what others consider achievable. This understanding would guide her through every future challenge and opportunity, making her not just an exceptional marksman, but an exceptional soldier in every sense of the word.